welcome back to Combat Mission, where we're going to take a look at the idea of effective range. This is, very simply, the concept that although most weapons have a maximum range that represents the physical limit they can project their ammunition, inside that limit there is a point at which accuracy, penetrative power, and/or the shooter's ability to take advantage of the weapon's technical characteristics declines. So we're going to quickly go over some of those technical and human elements, think about some factors that can influence them, and then consider the tactical implications of the interplay between weapons with different effective ranges. Starting with the technical, a simple but useful metric to examine is muzzle velocity. If we take a submachine gun, like an MP40, we can see that it fires small pistol caliber ammunition through a relatively short barrel. The 9mm bullets have rounded tips, so they're not as ballistically efficient as they could be. The bullet is large compared to the amount of propellant that's going to launch it, and the short barrel means that the bullet spends less time getting a push when that propellant detonates. The result is a muzzle velocity of about 400 meters a second. Once the bullet has been fired, it slows down quite quickly, resulting in a rapid drop-off for the trajectory and a relatively short maximum range of 250 meters. Note that this is the maximum range. That's the physical limit for how far the bullet is going to go. But at that maximum range, the trajectory and inaccuracy of the rounds mean that it's difficult to get rounds on target. So the effective range, the range at which fire can realistically be expected to hit what it's aimed at, is more like 200 meters. And obviously as ranges decrease, it becomes easier to hit targets and the weapon becomes more effective. That's a technical limitation, where the characteristics of the weapon and its ammunition are restricting the effective range. If we take a rifle, like a Kar98K, we are less limited by the technical. The Kar98K fires rifle caliber rounds through a long barrel. The 8mm Mauser bullets are pointed, so they have a good ballistic profile. There's a lot more propellant in the cartridge compared to the size of the bullet, and the long barrel means that fired bullets spend more time being pushed by the energy from the propellant burning. The result is a muzzle velocity of 760 meters a second and a maximum range of 4,700 meters. Much further than the submachine guns, but now we have a problem. It's just not easy to see a human-sized target at that range. Looking down the valley in this photograph, the white building in the center is about 3,900 meters away. That's not even the maximum range of 4,700, but we can't even distinguish black doors and windows on that building. It's just a white blob. So here, it's not the technical characteristics of the rifle making it hard to hit targets. It's the limits of the Mark I human eyeball. Even if we could see human-sized targets at that distance, the difficulty in manipulating the weapon with the kind of precision required to score a hit is pretty questionable. Even tiny errors at the shooter's end will magnify into substantial misses after a couple of kilometers. So with our rifle, the effective range is limited by the human factor. It's just not practical to accurately engage targets at very long ranges, even though the rifle can reach out that far. The effective range of the Kar98K is about 500 meters. In our photograph, the edge of the tree line visible through the gap in the trees on the right is about that distance. And just to complete the picture, the corner of the wall left of the bottom center is about 250 meters, which is the maximum range of the MP40. Now that we've established the idea that effective range is either the technical limit of the weapon or the human limit of the shooter, whichever is shortest, we can start messing with some other variables. For example, because the effective range of our Kar98K is limited by the human rather than the technical, we can extend it. We can add a telescopic scope to boost the Mark I human eyeball, we can train the shooter to a higher standard of marksmanship, and we can give them a spotter to help get them on target. Now, our Kar98K might have an effective range of 800 meters, or in our photograph, roughly out to this house behind the trees. We can't do that with the MP40 because it's technically limited. It doesn't matter how much you improve the human factor or how many optics you add. The laws of physics aren't going to let you extend the maximum range. Another way we can extend the effective range of weapons is to cheat and change the size of the target. If we look at our building 800 meters away, putting a round through a window is a difficult task. just hitting the building is a lot less difficult. Something like a Kar-98K might have a 500 meter effective range against point targets, but a longer effective range against area targets. This effectiveness can be further enhanced by simply increasing the number of weapons engaging the area. If you're being fired at by a single rifleman 1,000 meters away, statistically, you're pretty safe. If you're being fired at by a company of riflemen, you're statistically a lot less safe. Finally, when we create new weapons, we can also build them with technical characteristics that match up to the ranges we expect engagements to take place at. Since World War II, most militaries have come to the conclusion that since most infantry engagements take place inside 300 meters, full-power rifle cartridges are somewhat excessive. Hence, the assault rifle, which uses an intermediate cartridge balancing the qualities of submachine guns and rifles. For reference, in the photograph, the static caravan on the left is about 300 meters away. All of this has some obvious tactical implications. If we take a Soviet SMG squad and a German rifle squad, we have two groups with different effective ranges. The SMG troops have an effective range of 200 meters, the riflemen have an effective range of 500 meters. This creates a range envelope. To get their own weapons into effective range, the SMG squad will have to cross 300 meters of ground where they are within the effective weapons range of the riflemen. That is a tactical problem for the SMG troops. One way they can improve their chances would be to bring in another weapon system with a greater effective range than the riflemen. If the SMG squad is backed up by a heavy machine gun team, we have another range envelope. The HMG can sit at arm's length and suppress the rifle squad while the SMG troops advance. So having a mix of weapon systems with different effective ranges is very useful. Now, our riflemen have a tactical problem. How can they solve this, assuming they can't bring up longer ranged weapons of their own? The easiest way is to exploit the terrain. If our riflemen take up a position where line of sight is restricted to their own effective range, they can nullify the advantage of longer range weapon systems. For example, if they dig in 500 meters down a reverse slope, the heavy machine gun team can't take advantage of its range envelope because it can't see them without coming to the crest and entering the rifleman's effective range. Of course, it's important to bear in mind that the riflemen opening fire at the limit of their effective range by no means guarantees effective fire for several reasons. The first is something that we've already alluded to. Battlefields are not target ranges. They're filled with cover and concealment that interrupts line of sight. Notwithstanding the low chance of an enemy who wants to live using an exposed avenue of approach, areas that appear to be open kill zones can be full of micro-terrain for them to hide in, and even the simple act of going prone significantly reduces the size of the target. If a weapon's effective range increases against larger targets, obviously it decreases against smaller ones. Second, the limit of effective range is not some kind of line of death, where you're safe on one side and you get shot the instant you cross. It simply represents the distance at which the fire starts to become effective, and there are many more factors that determine how effective fire is than the effective range of the weapons involved. For example, most people do not enjoy being shot at, so opening fire on the enemy will generally cause them to react and seek cover, becoming harder targets. This means that the effectiveness of the opening shots of an engagement are disproportionately more important than subsequent ones. If the SMG squad comes under rifle fire at 500 meters, they're at the limit of effective range, so there's a good chance that the initial volley isn't going to score many hits. Once the enemy go to ground, the fire is going to be even less effective. The riflemen are going to inflict fewer casualties and find it harder to fix the SMG troops in place, but they are going to be able to keep them at arm's length. On the other hand, if the riflemen remain hidden and wait until the SMG squad have closed to 100 meters, they are likely to be much more effective with that first volley. Even though they're not taking advantage of their effective range envelope advantage over the SMG troops, closer ranges mean a higher chance of inflicting more casualties before the enemy reacts, and a higher chance of hitting targets once they've gone to ground. So rather than fending the SMG squad off with a long-range engagement, the riflemen could choose to sacrifice their advantage in effective range in pursuit of inflicting a decisive blow. In other words, tactics aren't as simple as comparing effective ranges and seeing who comes out on top. There's a lot of granularity and a lot of nuance. Effective range is a very important concept, and it provides a solid variable to consider when thinking about fields of fire, kill zones, avenues of approach, and force composition. It's really useful for contextualizing the distances between terrain features and working out what you can achieve with your fire. But like all of these concepts, it's not the be-all and end-all. It's a tool in a toolbox. It's a way of looking at things. Fire at close ranges is always going to be more effective than fire at long ranges, and effective fire does not necessarily take place at the effective ranges of weapons. That might sound counterintuitive, but it depends an awful lot on who decides what the effective range is. So that's it for this quick overview of the idea of effective range. Hopefully that was interesting and useful. If you'd like to see these videos early and support the channel, you can do so via Patreon and YouTube memberships. Whether you do or not, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.